Welcome to episode 17 of the Living History of Bill Thomson. I'm Rolendra, interviewing my father, Bill Thomson, about his memories and experiences from his life. Welcome, Dad.
Hi.
Well, we were leaving off last time, right around the time that you built the house on Canterwood.
Okay.
Also, I guess one thing I forgot to mention is that in the mid-90s, you were forced out as department head
Uh,
at WSU.
WSU. I can't remember. I know I left it. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. I think there was a mutual agreement. I didn't want to do it anymore anyway.
Okay.
It's and Dick Sollers, as I remember, took over as department head.
Right.
And he had the personality of a mute. So and by that time, Jim Peterson had left. He'd gone up to become a dean or a VP or something. And so the whole department was kind of, and I was just basically pretty much finished with it all,
Yeah.
So I just finished up my last doctoral students and then left.
So, but at this time, yeah, you're no longer department head, but you're still working there and moved into this new house.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I guess the main thing that would have happened next was in 2001 was when Paul learned that he had the cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'm trying to, was he in California at that point?
Well, he was,
No,
he may have been living in Calgary because he had moved to Boulder.
That's right.
And then he spent a period of time in Calgary for a year or two. I'm not quite sure how long.
Yeah. And that's when he met Carol.
He met Carol, yeah, after Angie had left.
Right. Yeah.
And then he met Carol, and so
yeah,
got married to Carol, and they had Carol's two kids, Dana and Zach.
Right.
And they were living there in Boulder, but yeah, there was a period of time when he transferred over to Calgary and kind of stayed there for like a year or two. I'm not quite sure how long.
Yeah, that's right.
But I remember we visited him there in 2002.
Yeah.
So he had kind of been in Calgary close to the end, and he came back to Colorado not long before he died.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He died in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. Where did he meet Carol and her kids? That was in Colorado, right?
In Colorado, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I remember visiting them one time when they were living in Colorado. Oh, brother. Zach was the boy. And what was the girl's name? I can't remember her name.
Dana.
Oh, God. Yeah. She was out, taking on the neighborhood. And at one point I was staying up there visiting, and I was staying upstairs in their house, and she was walking around all the time in bra and panties,
Mm-hmm.
And so I called Artie and I said, I want you to record this, because I didn't trust her at all, what she might claim. And so I recorded it, and then I got the hell out of there. She was, what a case. Zach, I thought had some character left, but then he finally just moved to the coast, I think.
Yeah.
And I think he's still there.
Okay. So yeah, would have been 2003 when Paul died.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what I remember about that is, he was on all these meds and trying to, uh, get more meds in and all that stuff because he was in a
Yeah.
lot of pain. And Carol was just cussing at the people who were supplying the meds, and every four-letter word you can imagine. I mean, and I'm sitting there trying to deal with that. All I want to do is get Paul the meds he needs.
Uh-huh.
And she's just, well, she was being Carol.
Well, she had a pretty big meltdown at the end there.
She what?
She had a pretty big meltdown at the end when Paul was
Yeah.
dying. Yeah.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
And that was pretty hard on you, as I remember. It was really hard on you.
Yeah. It was, because that's the first kid,
Yeah.
and so I went up there a number of times,
Yeah.
and
You would stay there for a week or two trying to help out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I was there, basically when he died,
Yeah.
and because trying to deal with the meds and everything, and Carol cussing at everybody. Oh God, it's like a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's bad enough to lose your kid, let alone in the middle of all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. I remember feeling like after he died that it seemed like you aged about 10 or 15 years, like all at once.
Yeah, yes, he did. That cancer took a lot out of him.
Yeah.
And pancreatic cancer is just it's a death sentence, basically. I know
Right.
one person who survived it, a guy I went to high school with, and he's still alive, and he's a year older than I am.
Yeah.
It's very unusual.
Yeah. Well, I remember actually feeling like you had aged um, a lot through the stress of dealing with it.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Like in 2002, you still had a lot of hop in your step and and then the next year after Paul died, it was just like it just seemed like you'd gotten really tired and
Yeah,
kind of worn down by it.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
you retired the next year. You used to say that you were going to work, you were never going to retire. You would
yeah, I
work
know.
until you're in your 80s, 90s, however long it took.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I retired in '04.
Yeah.
I was 65.
Yeah.
uh, and the department was not going in. Jim Peterson had left to go up into administration. Zala was just doing the department chair, and he had the communication skills of a mute.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, the whole thing was falling apart. The only good thing was that Molly Mahallingham and Canona both left.
Uh-huh.
And I think I met Reed Miller right when they announced they were leaving, and he and I went there, and I drank way too much gin and tonics
Okay.
in celebration.
Uh-huh. Well, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Artie and and what she was like and how it was to be married to her. That was a big change.
Yeah, well, she was, of course, quite different than my
Uh-huh.
mom, and very talkative and open, and discussing almost everything. And so we got along real well, and and it turned into a relationship.
Uh-huh.
So, and I used to go up there frequently
Yeah.
to Spokane, and she came down to Moscow a number of times.
Mhm.
In fact, I've got a photo when it snowed in Moscow, and she was standing by the lamppost in Garfield
Okay.
with snow all over it. I've still
Uh-huh.
got that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then I guess it would have been the year you retired is when you moved down to Tucson. Would have been
Yeah,
2004.
yeah. I had actually I can't remember what year it was, but I did a visit.
Mhm,
I was on the accreditation board,
mhm.
and so every chemical engineering department, every 4 years or so, 5 years, uh, gets visited to make sure that the accreditation is still good.
Yeah.
And so I went down to Tucson, to U of A, Arizona, and the university was a mess.
Mhm.
and and uh, Artie came with me. And what I do remember is we were playing tennis in January, and I said, "Wow."
Uh-huh.
uh, anyway, yeah, that's right.
So yeah, so you were living there in the winters and living up at Bead Lake in the summers.
Right, right. Yeah, at first we lived in the uh, what are they, casita
Mhm.
on Dale Haven Circle, because we went looking for a place, and so we found that one for sale,
Yeah.
and so we bought it as a place to come to in the summertime, you know,
Mhm.
and then it was later on when we decided that we sold the house up in Candlewood and decided we were going to stay in Tucson full time, and that's when we sold the casita and then bought the house we're in now.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Let's see. It would have been around that time that your brother Tom, Uncle Tom, got really sick.
Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to think of that.
'Cause I
Yeah,
think
he was in bad shape. I'm trying to remember what he had.
well, he had diabetes.
Well, he had diabetes. I don't think he died from the diabetes.
Well, he got gangrene because of the
Oh,
neuropathy,
that's right. You're right.
because of the diabetes.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, he was. He came up to the lake one time, and he could hardly get up the little short steps that went into the
Yeah.
house. And so, I knew it wasn't good. And I was with him when he died. He was in the hospital. This is in Colorado, in Denver.
Right. Well, he had to have both his legs amputated eventually.
He had what?
Both of his legs were amputated.
Yes, yes. And he was it was awful. What a way to be. And
Yeah.
so he told me, he said, "I want them to off me," when I visited him, because we went to Artie and I went to Colorado to so we stayed at a hotel motel so we could visit him.
Yeah.
And then he had this longtime woman that he was really friends with. There wasn't a romantic relationship at all, but she was there too,
Uh-huh.
and she was. I haven't heard from her in a long, long time. But I went in at the hospital to visit him. He said, "I want them to off me," and I said, "They won't do that, Tom. That's."
Uh-huh.
So I said, "So here's what to do." I said, "They give you a pill every night," and I figured it was something that was keeping him alive.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'll tell you what. Tonight, when they give you the pill, take it, accept it as if you're going to take it, and then throw it away." And he died that night.
Uh-huh.
So it's a, and Artie and I were up in Colorado at the time. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
And he would have only been about 63, 64 at the time.
yeah.
So I think he died in 07.
In '07, okay, he was
Yeah.
born in '41.
41. So 466 then.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was. He'd had it,
Yeah.
and he could hardly even talk when he said he's. I want them to off me, typical New York,
Yeah.
New Yorkese.
Yeah.
Uh, and we had, trying to think if we had some kind of a service up there after he died. I think we did, because Artie and I were already there, and that woman that he knew who lived in Maryland,
Uh-huh.
she was there. So we had some kind of a thing, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm. Well, what else can you think of from that period of time that you'd like to share? Any stories or memories of? This would have been
At
your retirement period of time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, my retirement. Trying to think, did they have a party? I don't think they did. But Salas was department chair. He didn't know how to do anything.
mhm. I remember for a period of time you were working for some lawyers as an expert witness.
Yes, I did a lot of that expert witnessing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think where the lawyers were located. I can't remember now, but not up in our neck of the woods. I can't even remember how I connected with them.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did a lot of expert witnessing with them. And boy, I mean, that paid through the nose.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, and there were about 3 cases that they took on,
Mhm.
uh, and they had hired me to be a consultant on it.
Right.
And so I even testified in a couple of them.
Uh-huh.
There was a woman, female lawyer, who claimed she was an engineer, but she was, I think she was just making it all up. She was on the other side. And oh my God, I mean, she didn't know anything. And a
Yeah.
lot of it were technical issues with air pollution and that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And she was on the side of the company, and and she didn't know diddly. And so we finally had some kind of a meeting with the lawyers and everything else, and she was there representing their side, and I was there representing, I can't remember who.
Uh-huh.
But at the end of that, the other side just gave up because she was so bad that she couldn't answer a single question.
Yeah.
So uh, then I got tired of doing that. It was too stressful
Right.
doing that kind of consulting. So
Um, anything you can remember about social or political developments that were important to you at the time?
what year are we talking about now?
Well, it would have been, I guess in 2001, you had 9/11 and you had all the
Oh
wars, that
yeah,
came after that.
yeah.
Um, those
Yeah,
were the
there
big
was a
things that were
guy
going
that was also a consultant for the same company I was, that I got to know pretty well.
on. Uh-huh.
And he and I talked a lot about politics. He was fairly liberal.
Uh-huh.
Uh, can't remember where he even resided. It wasn't there in Colorado. But other than that, I didn't have anybody to talk politics about.
Yeah.
When you think about it, except the family, of course.
Yeah. Well, did you end up with any impressions or shifting ideas about the world and based on how things went over the course of your life?
Say that again. I didn't understand that question.
I'm curious over the course of your life, based on how events unfolded,
Yeah.
whether you had any shifting beliefs or
Well, yeah.
ideas about how the world works.
I became more and more liberal.
Uh-huh.
I was probably middle of the road early on,
Yeah.
because I did a lot of consulting for companies, so I saw a lot of the company side of things. Uh, and then I got to, and I did some consulting for like Unical's lawyers and what have you. And I got to know him pretty well. He and I used to play racquetball.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and I can't even remember his name, but we got to be pretty good friends. He was an attorney for Unical, and when I got to know him pretty well, he admitted that some of the stuff was pretty bogus,
Uh-huh.
even though he was consulting for them, being
Yeah.
their attorney.
Yeah.
So, I got to be more and more liberal by about that point. And even this guy, a typical lawyer, he was getting more and more liberal because there were
Uh-huh.
so many bad things going on.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I guess that kind of takes us up into the 2010s.
okay.
At some
Okay.
point, I think maybe 2016 is when you finally decided to move to Tucson full time.
Yeah. And
And so
I'm
what would
trying to
be Lake Place?
well, I think just taking care of that place up there in Bead Lake, was getting to be much. When I come back in the spring, I remember being up there on the roof and
Uh-huh.
at a older than I should have been age
Uh-huh.
up there shoveling snow off it. So
Yeah.
we just decided that this was too much, and the family, the kids have all had their own lives, and so they weren't coming up anymore, and so that's why we sold it and moved to Tucson full time. And to
Yeah.
begin with, we stayed in the casita, and I'm trying to remember what caused us to look for another place. I think we just got tired of the casita living,
Uh-huh.
and people we had some new people move in, and they weren't very friendly. So uh, we met Phil. Let me see. Oh, I know what I did. I said, let's see if we can find a place on, where we're living now.
Uh-huh.
And so I sent a letter to every homeowner there, and I said, if you're ever thinking of moving, selling, I said,
Yeah.
we'd be interested. And I got one response back. It was from Phyllis Kelly. And she said, well, I'd be interested in selling, so we arranged to meet, and we went up there, and we had a couple of glasses of wine with her and all, and we got to be friends with her and all. And I said, she said, she says, the only thing is that she said, is I'd love to stay in this community, but this house is too big to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, we could buy your place and we'll rent you our casita, which is a lot less upkeep, and we promise never to raise the rent as long as you live there.
Uh-huh.
And so, and that's what we did. And then the way we moved, I got all my buddies together and we moved room by room. So there was no moving expenses.
Yeah.
And of course, then we became really close friends with Phyllis. She's still alive. She's 91.
Uh-huh.
And she lives up with her daughter. No, it's anyway. Moni, Bob and Moni, and I can't. One of them is related to her, and she doesn't like it at all. Moni is kind of hard to take,
Okay.
and so she's been planning on moving back to an assisted living place that's really close to us here. She lived there for a while, and we used to go over all the time and have dinner with her. And, it's really a nice place,
Yeah.
and so we'll see if that happens. But we've remained friends with Phyllis, and yeah, she's got a lot of health problems, but 91,
Uh-huh.
goodness.
Well, yeah, anything else that you want to share about any stories or memories from your recent history then?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think. Of course, we had big battles with the board members,
Uh-huh.
the president and the vice president, who were, kind of right wing beliefs and every little thing, always fining people and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so for a couple of years there, it was getting pretty bad. And then she wanted to bar outsiders from the tennis courts.
Right.
And, of the 10 guys that play there, probably there are 7 outsiders.
Uh-huh.
So we battled that one because there was no way she could do that.
Yeah.
And but it was very stressful
Uh-huh.
because dealing with the two of them. And then she finally, I can't remember why she left, but we all celebrated it. But nobody liked her because she didn't know, hadn't a clue of how to lead anything.
Uh-huh.
And so we got Fred Donato, who we gotten to be friends with, and he was a ex-fire chief in Rochester, New York, and we got to be friends with him and his wife,
Mhm.
and talk about leadership skills. I mean, he had them in spades. So somehow we arranged to move Chris Weiler out, and Fred Donato took over as president. And then he got tired of doing it, and then some other people did it and did it poorly. And so we talked Fred into doing it again. So he's president again, you know. So, and you can just see people with leadership skills, what they're like, you know. They know not when to scream bloody murder and how to deal with issues, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm not really sure what else to ask you about. We've come up to sort of the present moment
yeah,
point.
looks that way. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, not really. It's you know, the tennis group is basically Artie's playing tennis regularly now too, and doing really well. Everybody's talking about how well she's playing.
Yeah.
And so she plays with a bunch of women, and Phil Petticord, you know, fills in when they need somebody. Have you met Phil, haven't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy, just really is. So, you know, because of my physical condition, you know, I said I'd like to play, but I can't play the full 2 hours. And so I said, could you just hit the ball to me so I could get my stroke back and all? So 15 minutes before the group plays tennis, I meet him on the tennis courts, and he has a big bucket of balls, and he just hits them to me on one bounce. And so I got my swing back to the point where I can now play, you know, a couple of sets of tennis, you know.
Yeah.
Not too many, but so Phil's been just a blessing, you know. And then we go to coffee. The guys all go to coffee, and Phil goes, and so he always calls me when they're leaving so I can meet them there, that kind of thing. So yeah, he's been a real. His wife is a little hard to take. She's I don't know what to call. They're from Baltimore,
Okay.
and so she is a little strange, you know. She's not very not very pleasant. She's not bad, but it's like she rarely smiles.
Yeah.
And Phil is all about, you know, enjoying things and talking about stuff and all. And he's really into cars, and I give him a hard time about it. You know? He's got a Corvette.
Okay.
Yeah. So I, you know, I tell him, I said, all it does is make noise and burn gas. But anyway, but he's a constant presence. And whenever they're going to do something, you know, the tennis group, because I don't play all the time now, and he calls me up so I can join them, you know, and so it gives us a nice social life there too. So, but yeah, it's basically my life, and but I can still move okay. And of course, I'm driving the Beamer still, but I'm going to have to. Artie's car, you know, that Lexus.
Yeah.
There's so many damn buttons on that, and Artie's going to be gone for a couple of weeks, you know, when you guys come and all. But you know, I'm going to get her. I said, let's go with that. Let me drive that thing. Show me where all the damn buttons are. There must be 50 of them.
Right.
And all I want to know is, you know, how to do the simple things. And I don't care if it talks to me or the map shows up or anything.
Right. I guess that is one thing that we forgot to mention, is that you got your convertible after you moved down to Tucson. So
that's right. Oh, this is the second one.
It's the second one, yeah.
Remember the first one? What happened?
Austin Healy, huh?
No. I had a Z3.
A Z3.
Austin Healy is way back when.
Yeah.
No, when living down here, when we moved down here, I went to the I can't remember what the name, the big place that sells all the used cars, and they had a Z3.
Okay.
And so I drove it, and it looks just like the Z4 that I have now. Anyway, I came up to a stop sign behind a big pickup truck
Mhm.
with a big hitch on the back.
Yeah.
And he started talking to his buddies who were, workmen working over there on a site, and he couldn't hear them. And of course, I guess he couldn't see me because I was right behind him.
Uh-huh.
And he backed up, and the hitch went right into the radiator
Okay.
and totaled the Z3.
Wow.
The good news is, of course, he had to pay for whatever it was, and I used that to buy a Z4.
Uh-huh.
So no, the Austin Healey goes way back to when I left Stanford.
Yeah.
uh, I'd saved up enough money because I was on a fellowship, and always had roommates, so we shared the rent. So I was able to actually save money and plus go to graduate school full time.
Uh-huh.
And so I had enough to put a down payment on a car, and so I took the job with Avco up in Massachusetts. So I called my mom and I said, I'm coming back. I'm finishing up my degree, and I said, but I want to get an Austin Healey, and if I send you the money, can you go up to the Austin Healey dealer in New York? She was working in New York City, and order one for me. And I said, a white one would be fine.
Mhm.
So she did. And when I got to New York, I had put the down payment on it. I went up and paid the rest of it and drove it down to Staten Island. And then my friend from high school, Jack Vesci, I don't know if you ever met him.
I can't remember if I've met him or not.
Right? You may not have. But he came down and I said, I got a hold of him because we've been good friends in high school.
Uh-huh.
And he went to the Merchant Marine Academy. And so he spent the career in the Merchant Marines, but he was an officer.
Mhm.
So I had the Austin Healey. So he and I took a drive down to the Jersey Shore, and I looked up, the guy I used to work for, Tom Rospis, and
Yeah.
anyway, we had a real good time driving in the Austin Healey with the top down, and all.
Uh-huh.
So that's ever since then I've had a sports car.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, anything looking back at your life, any kind of reflections or things that you'd like to say
you know,
about your
I,
life and what you've learned from it? And I don't
I
know.
have to say that I was real lucky. I learned so much from because I lived such a different life than most people. Like the people go to college, they had a different. I didn't even think growing up going to college.
Yeah.
And so I had all of that kind of thing. Uh, Learning how to get along with people, developing leadership skills there and at the university.
Uh-huh.
Honest to God, I had it so good.
Yeah.
I really have. And even now, at the age of 84, even though I have some limited mobility issues, I mean, compared to other people my age,
Uh-huh.
it's just, I've been just really fortunate.
Yeah.
And you know what I attribute it to? Exercise.
Uh-huh.
I exercised from the time I given it up a little bit, and it was Lou Edwards who talked me into it when I first went to teach at Idaho.
Mhm.
And he says, because I was stressed, and he said, we need to get exercise, it's
Yeah.
important. And from that point on, I exercised regularly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's kept me in good health all these years.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Okay.
uh,
Well, I guess another thing that maybe occurs to me is whether you have any thoughts about, dying and what you think that might be like, or what you expect
uh,
when that comes.
I don't, if there's an afterlife, I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
And if there isn't, I won't know it.
Okay.
uh, I, I think, getting old, I think it gets to be a point where it gets difficult to live.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not at that point.
Yeah.
Yes, I've got some issues with, like walking and things like that. And, I can only play tennis for a little bit, but still, But if it comes to the point where I can't move at all, I think what happens with people is they just give up living.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it's like.
Right.
So, but I don't think much of it. I mean, everybody dies.
Hmm.
So the only thing bad about dying is losing the people who are close to you.
Yeah.
And when you think of everybody I grew up with has died except one.
Uh-huh.
And which reminds me, I need to call him Ray Polgar. And
Okay.
he's actually 2 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of the girls that we hung around with are still living.
Uh-huh.
But as far as guys are concerned, that's it.
Yeah.
I've got a cousin in Massachusetts,
Hmm.
Wilma, that I like to talk to, and she has got the incredible New England accent. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
is really. I enjoy talking to her just to hear the accent. But she was. I probably told you this story, but back when my brother was being born,
Hmm.
my mother left me up with Aunt Marion up in Taunton,
Okay.
and Wilma was her second oldest kid, and Wilma was like maybe 2 years older than me,
Hmm.
and she's a picture. Aunt Marion went out and took a photo of Wilma pushing me in a baby carriage,
Okay.
and my mother saw it and decided she was trying to turn me into a sissy. So
Okay.
she came up and took me back to New York.
Okay.
But I talk to Wilma periodically,
Uh-huh.
and she's a lot of fun to talk with. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay. Well, I guess
that.
that's a wrap then, huh?
Okay.
All right. Well, it's been fun doing this with you, Dad.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna sign out.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.